All right, welcome everybody to our bi-weekly architecture meeting. Thanks for attending. Great to see you all here again. I see we've got the normal crew, and I think we've got a couple of newer folks that have come. At least one. I think Chris, you're new here. You want to say hello to everybody? I think he's a new member of the OCA, and just thought I'd give him a second to introduce himself. Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Very new. I'm kind of jumping around. I had a steering committee meeting I went to this morning. I went to a couple of the other meetings in the last couple of weeks, just trying to get my feet under me and understand kind of where everything is at. I appreciate you inviting me. As far as background, I work at a company called TrueStar that focuses heavily on kind of data automation around threat intelligence. Historically, I came from the product engineering team at Alien Vault that built USM Anywhere, that got acquired by AT&T cybersecurity in 2018 or so. So I've been mucking around in cyber for a while and happy to be here.
Yes, thank you, Chris. So I love the expertise you have in threat intelligence. I think that could line up with some of our needs.
Yep.
So that we really could use your expertise in a few areas. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and welcome to the group.
Thanks.
All right, so the agenda today is there's a couple things on the agenda that are normal, right? We usually go through our wonderful Mitch Bill Adams show, bringing up the C4 diagrams and continue to make progress on it. And again, thanks guys so much for the work you do on that. So we'll go through the latest updates, and there's another as our process has been going. These guys have been doing that. Updated diagrams, and then Mitch goes ahead and puts them as a branch out there, and you should see the submission come in as a branch request, and then we review them at this meeting, and then after this meeting, if we're all okay with them, we'll go ahead and merge them in, and then we'll repeat the process again. So we're continuing that process of updating these diagrams so we can get more and more granularity, which we've done previously, and I think lately, Mitch, you work a little bit to other components that we haven't touched yet. So we'll do that. That's topic number one. Topic number two, as you guys know, is I've been trying to put together our initial architecture document just to start write stuff down, if you will. And it's in its second revision. I sent it out earlier this week. I did get a few comments back from people, which made me reflect a little bit. Good comments. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then the third one, I wanted to revive our discussion around use cases that were written for us. I think Doug Hurd did it. And I think what I'd like to do is talk about how that could fit into our overall process here of the architecture, and how we can use that as a scoping document as well as a focus, and see if we can use that in some way to help us align all of these things together to a goal. So, that's toward the end of the discussion. And then after that, open forum for anybody else that wants to bring something up or discuss any other topics that you guys feel are okay. Okay, any questions? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Mitch, Bill, and Adam.
Okay. So for those of you who are not, let me give you a quick orientation of what we're doing, and I'll show you what we have so far. We are not so far as to necessarily merge these to master, but I'll give you a little sort of a quick view, and I'll share just the application that I want to share this time. There we go. Let's see. I think this one, huh? Right. So can you see a browser window? Let me get rid of that and that. There we go. Yeah. Ideally, just a browser window. So there's this. This is my public GitHub account here, and I've got forked the Cybersecurity Alliance repo, and I'm going to focus. So we have a branch called C4 diagrams parte parte. So that's part 4. That was my attempt at Spanish, which is probably pretty poor, and what we're doing here is, in general, we're working with building out these diagrams using this thing called the C4 model, which is not something I invented, but something I found as a way to standardize the look and feel of these diagrams. The point of this, the standardization, is much like when you're looking at a map of the world. You know to look for the north, south, east, west. glyph there, you roughly know what rivers look like and roads and so on, and you don't have to scratch your head and figure out how to read this thing. So this C4 model prescribes a variety of detail, starting with context and then containers and components. Don't, please, if you're used to containers in terms of Docker and so forth, don't rat hole into that. These containers are actually basically anything that describes a process. It could be a microservice, it could be just a standard process and so forth. Components are items within that. And context, so I kind of did this in a reverse order a little bit, but I'll bump up to the top. Highest level context is something like this, a description of systems. And what we've got so far, so we've, let me show you briefly how I do things, and I've changed this around a little bit. So let's see, before I jump into that, one of the intentions here is to capture as much as we can in terms of how we want our OCA architecture to look. Capture terms, definitions, relationships.
Could you throw a link in the chat to both where the official one is and where the one you're actually reviewing is for those that want to look at it?
Yeah, the official one you can. I'll just throw you a link to this particular branch, and then you can always go to the top of that, and you can go to the official one right here. It's when you see forked from. So I think hopefully that will just be sufficient for that. Let me see if I can do that in a. Let's see, all the chat applications. Here we go. Right. There's a link to what I'm looking at right now.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yep. So, what I want to show, I do lots of little commits. Adam and Bill and I, that's I'm Montville and William Munyon or Bill Munyon and I, we meet weekly for an hour to basically work on these diagrams, and we talk about a variety of things, scratching our heads over what the relationships are and so forth. We come from different parts of the security world. I won't give you a primer on that. We don't necessarily cover all of the knowledge that was required for all these diagrams. So we're trying to reach out, and so item number one, we're trying to reach out and get more help in terms of doing this right or doing it well. In the absence of input, we're going to make things up. That is also known as design. So there's that. One of the intentions here is to get rid of these diagrams. To collapse everything down in all of these. These diagrams are good. They represent a lot of information, but ideally we can capture that all in one diagram or one set of diagrams, or you can link things together. Okay. Let me see. The next thing I want to show you. So one way that I've done this is from I use draw.io. These are draw.io diagrams, and I'm going to open what's been committed here. And one of the first things I want to point out is there used to be multiple draw.io files. So one of the big news items for the changes that are in this branch is I've created a single draw.io file. And there's some fun stuff here I wanted to share with you, and I'll try and be quick so I don't take the whole time. But a single draw.io file with tabs. Okay, so you might think, well, so what? What's the big deal there? Well, what's kind of interesting about that is there's this way to link things. So I'm in the editing mode. I'm actually editing this file. And you can jump to these other views, and I'm drilling down and down in detail, and I can go jump backwards. Oops, jump backwards. Yep. And again, backwards, back up in detail. So that's fun. There's now this new capability to navigate these. What's also kind of interesting about that, what's also been committed here, if you take a look in the branch itself, this is all, by the way, under architecture documents. So there's this draw.io file. I was just basically looking at this. You can export this stuff as HTML. That's fun too, because I'm speaking more in terms of how to look at this. So if you take a look at, right, so I'm just using my browser to take a look at that HTML file. It looks like this. And you can poke at these and dive in. So for example, let me do the same thing. So I can dive into the collection system, and I can dive further into the management portion of the collection system and look at these things. And I can go backwards, back to the management portion and back to the system diagram. So that's fun. So that's a new thing. One diagram that you can navigate with by clicking around. Questions so
So-
far? Comments?
Question mark. That looks really cool. Can I do that just clicking on stuff in GitHub, or do I have to download something or go somewhere?
I'm right now. There's not a great. I've been playing around. In fact, if you went to the repo itself and you clicked on so my branch, or this branch that is,
Yeah, I just did that. You click on HTML and you get a bunch of HTML.
yeah, and it's junk, right? So I haven't figured out how to make that browsable so you can just do that. There is going to be a way to do that, and I haven't sorted it out yet because I'm not quite ready.
Yeah, I love the navigation. That's great, Mitch. Thanks. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
I think that will help a
I love
lot.
the navigation. I just want to be able to do it because once you sort of do away with the multiple files,
Yes.
we can't get at the rest of it if we don't know how to do the navigation.
Correct. Yeah, correct. It would be broken for us.
Now, to be clear, I could export these also. Each of these tabs, basically what you're doing is you're basically just jumping between tabs. And each of these tabs could be exported as SVG files.
Okay. Okay. That's
We could
good.
definitely do that too. So that functionality is still there. Just it might on the side of actually creating different.
Because previously you were doing those SVG files and then you were sticking them in the README MD,
Yep.
right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Although the linking part is cool, and basically the people who do the work get to put the effort into how to organize it. So you're doing the work, do it however you want. It is easy for you, but it would be sort of nice if we could read them ourselves, even if it's got to be, hey, here's the instructions, just download draw.io and type this way, or download this file and do that.
Okay.
So if you tell us how to do it, do whatever easy for you because you're doing all the work.
Okay. It is certainly meant for consumption. So also I want to make sure, for example, one other thing, now that we don't have this might be harder for someone who's has a disability. I don't know how well this stuff would end up rendering from a usability standpoint for other people. So there is that. So if I just go for one way to do this would be to actually, so verbally I can tell you, you can download or do a Git clone of this branch, and that will give you this HTML file, and you can go visit an HTML file just using your browser, much like I've gotten here, right? File and wherever you download it. I have it in my home directory here on my laptop. In which case now you have HTML and you can just do it that way. I could write that down certainly. I'd like to make it.
If I have my own local copy.
Yep.
Just because I don't even have to clone it. I can just pull yours. It's just, it doesn't work on GitHub, I guess is the issue. Okay.
Correct. That's right. I haven't set up a web server style to be able to do that yet. But that is an intention. So
you might want to look at the page, the GitHub Pages stuff. You might be able to link with that.
I'm familiar with that. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Let's see. How much more time do I have? I want to do a quick time check.
Oh, at least another 15 minutes.
Okay, I'll try not to take 15. Let's see if I can do this in less than 5. So questions that have come up, I'm just going to throw them out there. I don't necessarily want to discuss the solutions to them or the how to solve. But you'll notice here, for example, posture at this highest level of system, we have threat intel, a configuration policy management system, and a posture assessment system. We've been focusing on this using SCAP v2. And figure things out in down below this in lower level. The reason that there's a question between assessment and so a question came up with respect to assessment and collection, and I'll dive into just the next level down. So architecturally, so far everything I've talked about is just like how to represent these images and so on, but this really is an architectural question. Inside of a collector, right, all the way down to the details. This is basically where we're inside a at this level. Basically, what we're talking about is this dotted line represents a process, and then inside this process we have these components, and that's why you don't see OpenDXL between these lines. These could be just normal function or object references and stuff like that. I suppose if you wanted to decompose it with messaging, you could, but I'm not prescribing that in how I'm representing this OCA architecture. So OpenDXL is not referred to here. However, up here it is. I've mentioned before. Now I'm going to go a quick aside. We do have a problem with these images in that there's nothing in OpenDXL ontology yet that talks about collection instructions. And that's still a to-do in my mind. These are the kind of discussions that come up when you start drawing things like, well, I looked at OpenDXL to see if in fact this actually maps to anything. The answer that I've found so far is no. Well, that means that we're ahead of it, or we're behind it, or we're wrong. I'm not sure which. So there's an open question. Diving back into the collection versus assessment part of
Just
this.
pausing right there for a second. So we have a question. Is there a process to, I mean, it's a great question and it's good work and it's just, you know, stick it on a parking lot or in an issue or something. But do we have a process so we don't lose it? Typically in regular development, you'd stick it in a GitHub issue or something. Is that the right way to?
I love
you're talking
that.
about various issues, so we don't sort of lose them. I think it might be good to have some process. I don't care what it is to handle them.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to handle them all. We want to stick them aside and get back to them later. We just don't want to forget them.
I'd be happy to. I like the GitHub issues myself. Others?
I agree. I agree. That's good.
Yeah.
Just, I did pick up that issue from the last meeting. I do have a working list of things that we got to follow up on, and I've gone to the PGB about. I mean, this is on the list. The OpenC2 stuff is on the list. I got a bunch of stuff. So this went on that list, but I agree. Let's do an open issue as well because that's written down and we could track it.
Well, maybe your list could turn into either an issue or a set of issues.
Yes, that's what I
Just to
probably
keep
should
it
do.
just to keep it open, right? Just to make sure that everybody can see, like, oh, here's, and maybe there's potentially discussion around each of these that a variety of people would want to join in on or ignore.
So, you know, I noted four things, just as a question to you guys. I mean, I noted four things from your last meeting, and the other one was help wanted, right? So I don't know if that's an issue, but I'd like to log them somewhere because I always get people asking on the OCA, I'd love to help. What do you have that I could do?
Well,
I'd like to post this.
see, that's where putting things in GitHub issues helps because
Yes.
not putting the issue of we need help in there, but putting the
Yes.
issues of what we need help on in there. Because
Yes.
then when somebody says, what can I do? Say, hey, go read the issues.
Yeah.
Now, the
Good
other
idea.
thing I think that particularly help with that issue of how can people help is I think we're still newbies in figuring out our way of what's sort of the swim lane for the architecture committee, what's the swim lane for the TSC, what's the swim lane for the actual projects. So that thing that's missing in OpenDXL ontology, that sounds like an issue for the OpenDXL project that we need an answer to. So there's sort of an issue on our side saying, hey, we need the project to do this. But it's not an architecture issue, it's an OpenDXL ontology issue.
Well,
so they need to have an issue
Some of
on
them
their
both,
side or
right?
whatever. But we need to get sort of straight of what's our job to do plus push it down to there. Now, I realize that particular project hasn't done a whole lot of late, but I believe there's some new renewed effort in getting it answering. So this is a good kind of thing to pass to them. And Russ, I think you as sort of project manager, that's sort of your job to be the traffic cop and keep us in our swim lanes. And hey, if we're blocked because they haven't done something, we at least we're on them or whatever.
Yeah, good points, Duncan. Very good point.
So, this is Adam. Can I break in for a second, Mitch?
please.
So, and I don't know when the right time is to talk about this, but
Now.
you know, I did have a chance. Okay, now perfect. I did have a chance to talk to the SCAP Endpoint Data Collection Group,
Good.
which is really what we're trying to represent here with these diagrams. They're drilling into the posture assessment solution or posture collection solution, right? And what they would like to do for the next little while is, and so first of all, they're really happy that we've done this, but they also have a lot of similar questions, right? Like, yes, we haven't defined anything on that, like Mitch, that last open question that you mentioned on that OpenDXL ontology, right? There's nothing defined there. But that group really, I mean, that's not really a problem for OpenDXL ontology to solve straight up. I think that's a problem for the endpoint data collection group to initially solve, maybe with the help of the ontology group. But it's the endpoint data collection architecture that's really trying to be represented here.
Yeah.
So really, they need to get involved, right? So, long story short, or maybe I'm making it worse, the endpoint data collection group wants to continue on with this work, but in their venue for the time being. So, what we talked about yesterday, we being Mitch, Bill, and myself, what we talked about yesterday is, okay, we aren't going to have our own separate little meetings on this anymore, or at least not for the next little while. We're going to go to the endpoint data collection group meetings that are ongoing. I think they're also on a bi-weekly basis, so there's no real difference to us. But we're going to focus on trying to get some of these questions answered from essentially the SCAP perspective. And then we'll be able to bring those back. Now, what that means in terms of our bandwidth to bring in other subdomains, because we have been asking for that, I'm not sure yet. So that's why I'm mentioning it, and I'm not sure if this is the right time to talk about that aspect of it. But I wanted to provide some extra context around the SCAP side.
No,
Yeah,
so that is really good. And to my point earlier, it didn't have to be the OpenDXL ontology. It's more to the point of, hey, get the group that's supposed to be working on it. So if it's a different group, that's fine. Now, the endpoint data collection group, refresh my memory. That's not the program committee. That's not the marketing committee. That's not the architecture committee. And it's not the technical committee. It's one of these new other things. How does
It's
it
an
fit in one of
SCAP.
these other
Yeah,
It's an
boxes?
SCAP thing. It's not even an OCA thing.
Correct. It's so there's SCAP is if you want to split it kind of in two views, right? Well, now they have three really, but there's SCAP content, and what they realized is that they came up short on the 1.x version of SCAP because they only defined content formats and they didn't define any plumbing. So the endpoint data collection group under the umbrella of NIST and SCAP is really the group that's trying to define the plumbing for SCAP content.
So it's not an OCA group.
Correct.
They're going to do something and feed it to us. When they feed it to us, which part of us over an OCA do they feed it to?
So that would be the SCAP prototype that they do want to build under the umbrella of OCA.
Great.
Yep, that makes sense.
And that's all I'm saying. We got to get our sort of that. We need one of these diagrams for how everything you just said in words works.
Yeah. Right. Human organization diagram.
C4 diagram be fine.
Sure. So what we're talking about are the people. If you think about Conway's law, we're talking about the people that are behind this dotted box.
Yeah.
Right. And we dove all the way into the collector. So we kind of dove way into a specific thing. Because I was trying to point out a question mark here, which we're going to pass on that question mark for now, because I think you're right. The juicy news here is we're going to basically engage with this group of people. Bill, Adam, and I, and anybody else who wants to join in too, certainly welcome. And we're going to try and sort out what OpenDXL pieces need to be in place, what actually lives inside the collector manager and this repository, and some of the basic architectural pieces inside this dotted box.
Great.
And I hate to be a jerk, but I'm going to keep being it. Anytime you say the word OpenDXL, please distinguish whether you're talking the protocol or the ontology.
Yeah,
whether
I'm
it's
sorry.
in OCA or in McAfee.
Right. So as you've noted, and that was feedback that you gave me, and I put that in place. All the links here have OpenDXL ontology on them.
I agree. It's just in words you said it without the word. So if anything, skip saying the word OpenDXL and only say ontology or only say protocol. Okay. You can keep straight which one you mean.
Yeah, I call it the ontology now just to be short, but
Okay. Good to know. I'll just use that synonym. So speaking of getting help, there are two other larger systems here, threat intelligence and configuration policy management, that we could dig into that we would probably be useful. I know a bit about configuration policy management systems, and I work for Tripwire. So does Stephen, who's also on the call. So we could flesh out what we like here.
I'm pretty sure we identified somebody with threat intelligence skills at the beginning of the call, didn't we?
Yeah, I heard a name. I did.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So you probably have some ideas or opinions about how this breaks down if we get into a dotted box version, kind of like this. The assessment system is going to be broken down into various pieces. We could talk about how to break this down too. So we're obviously we dove into this particular assessment part because, well, the people that I'm working with, Bill and Adam, know a lot about it, and we just decided to kind of and we were trying to express this stuff in this new model of the C4 model of architecture and so forth. So this is our first foray, if you will, down this leg of the tree.
So
Mitch,
I see how you went deep to understand it, and that's great. And I see how you want to get other people to go deep into the other two boxes, and that's great. But from a higher plane, is there a higher level box or 2 or 3, 5, I don't know, missing?
We've talked about
when we get to the use case discussion later, there's, one of the use cases says, hey, I want to touch a firewall. I don't think there's a firewall in any of these, or maybe there is.
No, not yet. No, we're iterating inside out, Duncan. So yeah, I mean, intention is to get us there, but I think we started with subdomain that we were comfortable with, and these guys are really strong in that area. And then we could A, prove out the C4 model that worked, and B, get started somewhere. But you're
Yeah,
right.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying, don't forget in going deep, there's still some other
No.
frauds.
Yeah, we'll talk about the up, because I tried to do the up and I got nosebleed, but we'll get to that in the next conversation.
There are a couple other things here that are interesting that are supporting pieces of this that kind of lead to higher level notions, which is there is also in this repository in here we've got a terminology. So there's a relationship to this allows us to and I want there to be a match between these words and what you see in this diagram, so that if you're looking at something that says collection, you might wonder, well, what in the world do they mean by collection? And then hopefully we would have a dictionary definition or refer to a dictionary or something more specific. And so that's one way to get the semantics of what this system is about. And then, of course, the other thing that we have are the use cases, which is this PDF file here. And ideally, there's going to be a map here. And what's missing from, pardon me, let me get to an actual version of this. What's missing from this highest level view that I want to get to your point, Mr. Sparrow, is you don't see any humans in here. And that doesn't seem right either, because this is in the end, this is meant for people, right? People run threat intelligence sharing systems, and they define policy and try to enforce it, and they're interested in figuring out the posture of their IT environments, IT and OT environments. So yeah, there's the intention is there's actually in the C4 model there's a higher level diagram here. There's also supposed to be an actual person in here, and for example, it'll look a little bit like that. Of course, I need to get the right names on those people and so forth. But anyhow, that's the kind of thing that's going to happen next. So A, there's a new branch. B, a call for help. C, there's some questions in here. We can create issues, and I think I'm done.
Well, I have one question for you, Mitch, because I'm trying to do top down. So I was looking at the diagrams, and I noticed you put like configuration policy management system in there, that nice box.
Yeah.
What diagram did you find that in? If you go back to the
yeah, let's go back here.
Because I was struggling. I've looked at two different diagrams that I think I've been using as reference point. This one and the one after. Yeah.
So
we made that up.
We did, but we've been focused on this bottom picture here.
There was no configuration in there. That's what's driving me crazy. Okay.
And I think I'm trying to remember what it was that we were interested in. Sorry, I can't give you what's going on here. A bigger view of this.
Okay.
Let's do that.
I've got it in front of me anyway. But okay, maybe this diagram is just wrong. But I did want to sync with you on that, because I started noticing that you put that in there, but I couldn't find it in this diagram.
Well, and so I think there isn't a configuration policy management system, but there was this idea of SACM and an orchestrator and posture evaluation, and there was a notion of collecting and making sense of stuff and so forth. But yeah, it's true, and I'd be happy to change things, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we could change the diagram. No one said this is 100% right. I'm just trying to calibrate with you on that, because I'm also struggling with this diagram. And we talked about this before, this is a mix of functions and products. There's a sim in here, and then there's something called decision making. And I thought we were going to clean that up. So that's a thing I have to talk about later. But I do want to get to, a diagram we both work off of, because obviously the C4 diagrams and the paper have to
Well, I mean, so to come back to your point, are we off base by having a configuration policy management system here? Should we be thinking of a different system? Or in fact, is this the right set?
For a second?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please do.
And put me in queue for once you clear a spot in queue.
Sorry, I did try to raise my hand, but so the configuration policy management system, where that really came from, and Bill, I think you might have to keep me honest on this one, but the SCAP endpoint data collection group that we just talked about has or had, well, they had at one point, they still have it, it's somewhere circulating around, a Word document that described the architecture. Inside that, they had a very basic diagram that has the concept of an application using this posture assessment system. And in that venue, we said, you know, an example of an application that would use the posture assessment system is a configuration policy management system. That's really where that came from. And so it may not be represented in the original colorful diagram that we were just looking at, but it's still something that exists out there, like in the real world, right? So
I mean, I guess, and a good point, Adam. So if that's true, maybe we ought to update the diagram to put it in the color diagram.
Well, my
I
intent is
thought
to
we
get
were
rid of this.
replacing the color diagram with
Yeah.
the C4 diagram.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
We got to at least stay consistent as we evolve these things. You know, I'm just noticing we already out of sync and we just got started. So I just want to use this current diagram as our basis as we clean it up. And as we're adding stuff like the configuration, I'm perfectly fine with it, but I don't want it to be lost and it's not in this diagram, and that's the one we're calibrating to.
Well, I think I mean, I would rather do is ASAP get rid of this diagram, capture everything that's in here, and then move instead of trying to backport, right? I mean, that would be that's my intention, is to try and get all that packed into here somehow as quickly as possible. We kind of gotten rat holed, I suppose, if you will, or focused on, you know, what this posture assessment system and how it looks. But perhaps what we should be doing.
It was a great exercise. It proved out a lot, and I think it gave us some foundation. So, I think that's great, right? We've got a lot of stuff that needs to be worked. So this gave us at least, I think, some basis to work off of.
But yeah, if everybody likes this, it sounds like everybody, based on what you're saying, Mr. Warren, is that we could get this, that we like the way that represents. If I can get all of this stuff in there, then we can get rid of this, and then we don't have to worry about backporting and consistency. We've all pushed it forward.
I like getting rid of it. I'm not sure we had 100% agreement on it as it was, because the problem is it's trying to show multiple views at the same time.
Right.
Correct.
You might end up with the same problem by the time you're done, but your goal is the correct goal.
Yes. As a matter of fact, my first attempt at doing this high level doc, which I'll talk about, I did run into the same problem. So we'll have to kind of work through it. So,
yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a note, though. We do want to probably start an effort to create a higher, what do we want to call this diagram? A high level diagram?
Yeah. So if I were to try and force the C4 idea on you, I'm going to just go visit that web page real quick. There is, you'll see the 4 levels are context, containers, and components. The diagram you just saw had context, containers, and components, right? So, however, there is a thing as a system. There is, such a thing as a system landscape diagram, right? And this is, I would say, is your higher level landscape, which is actually, well, you can read the definitions for this, but this would be my suggestion, take it or leave it, about how you could represent even a larger, higher level view of things.
You're doing the work. You get to pick how to do it. So, but
and I like being consistent with what you already got too. I'd like to stay consistent as much as we can on the approach.
Well, thankfully, if this works, and this model of granularity works for representing what we want to see in this architecture, I would try and build one of these out. So I can add that. That's actually pretty easy to do.
Well, I would highly recommend you do that. I'd also, from my hand up point, I'd also recommend that you, and Russ, I don't know if you were at the TSC meeting, but I do think you should spend a little bit of time with Mark, because again, he's the only person running for chair of the whole mess, so I suspect he'll be the chair. And his remarks at the TSC was he didn't get the C4 and thought maybe it was too detailed. And I think the reason is because, again, focused in a particular area, start with a slice, we got to crawl before we're running.
Exactly.
People coming in from the outside just look and go, I don't understand it, it's all too detailed. So I do think we need that broader, we need both broader starting at the high level. So if the right way to do that is the system diagram, fine. And then the second way is you got to somehow click on something somewhere and end up seeing the words, OpenDXL ontology. Great, I see those. You better see the words stick shifter somewhere. I think they may be in there, but they're not obvious.
Right.
And you should be able to stick on somewhere and see the SCAP v2, which is actually what you're focusing on, but you don't actually see it anywhere. So, so help with sort of the outsiders coming in on that would be great. But in particular, I think you better work on Mark because he is and everything.
No problem. We could talk to Mark. Matter of fact, we've already started talking to him because he was suggesting an event-driven diagramming system this morning. So I'll talk. Okay, I'll put
I
that on my
don't
list.
care the answers. And again, I think the people doing the work get to propose the way to do it. I can't tell you how to do it. You're doing it. If I want it done differently, I got to go do it. So
Yeah.
You're doing great. Keep doing it. But I do think it would help with your awareness and adoptions if you got a little more upward focus.
Okay. Noted.
Yep.
Thank you. So we'll have, so to close, we'll have two efforts going on because we already have the SCAP team engaged, and we're going to probably dive into, again, this the posture assessment system and some of that part. So aside from that, I'll try and make a higher level version of this. So maybe in this next pull request, I can at least introduce the higher level thing and start getting the right terms on there and so forth.
Sounds good, man. Now, Mitch, I'll work with you on that. Matter of fact, the next topic, I'll kind of show you what I tried to do unsuccessfully, but at the high level going down. So
Yeah, because even if you got something that's got holes in it, says we're still working on this, it helps other people.
It's got holes in it. I'm really good at making stuff that has holes in it. So hold on a second. Here we go. There it is. Can you guys see that? This mess here. Hold on, let me get a page. Can I do it in press mode?
Yes.
Can you see that diagram?
Yes, I can.
Yep. Okay, so, and this again is not right. I know that. But the intent was I was trying to work off of that very, and you can see I put the configuration in there just to be consistent with what you guys had. But what I'm trying to do here is show the overall structure of the OCA architecture. And I've noted in the paper there are two different areas we seem to be focused on. One is obviously communications. And you can see the little OpenC2 box and the little ontology box, which deals with just communicating across all these different components and functions. And then there's a second set of things we have, which are kind of like normalizing and proxying data. So it's got a consistent format for the consumers, but it's dealing with the local, data formats and APIs underneath them. And that's where SCAP and Stick Shifter seem to fit to me. And the group, we've been having a discussion. We do not yet have a clear delineation of when to use SCAP and what his role is versus Stick Shifter, but we're working on it. So, that's the first thing we're doing is trying to kind of relationships between these projects. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. We've seen some nice preliminary work on OpenC2 and the ontology and how that fit together. I think that's obvious. There's some work to do, but I think it's cleaner. What is, as I said, not as clean as the SCAP at Stick Shifter, which we're working through. I think we'll get through that, but so the idea here was to kind of represent, the communication fabric, if you will, with, that's not a great term, but that's something we had, and the quote unquote common services. Those two things are kind of the core of OCA, is kind of the way. So let me stop there and see if there's any comments. That's kind of trying to organize it.
I know you're going to be shocked that I have a comment, but I have a comment. This is Duncan.
Yes.
So I run a network. I got a gazillion things I go out and buy. How come I don't see the things I buy out there? I see the things that control them, but I don't see firewalls and IDSs and sandboxes and all that kind of junk. Where are the security controls in your picture? The thing we're actually controlling. The whole reason we're doing all this is because we want to get information from security devices and make decisions and tell them to do something different. So in these diagrams, it shows up. And the diagram you just did, it's all about what the humans do, not about what the gear does.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And there's no firewalls in this document either, in this picture either, is there?
And I've been making this comment since I joined this group. So that's why I said I didn't agree with this.
Wait, I thought those were supposed to be in the, can you blow it up? I thought those were supposed to be in the purple.
Oops, got it wrong.
I thought that was all stuff in the purple.
Over here?
Yeah,
I think so. It says collaboration platform there, and it looks like threat intelligence, collaboration, detection analysis. So, and again, that's the discussion we were having, Duncan, about these diagrams aren't quite right yet. So we got to work them.
But I do think we should not, throw the baby out with the bathwater. And yes, we're sort of coming at it from the human threat analysis side, but we do have to get to there are a bunch of security controls that you're going to play with. You're going to change them. That's the whole reason we do any of this.
Yes,
And they have to show up somewhere.
fair enough. Fair point. Fair point.
This is Chris Murphy. So wouldn't that kind of be when you kind of offload the management of that to other tools? Like, so instead of interfacing with a firewall directly, you would be the SOAR tools that you have represented above would be kind of where you would think that stuff would fall.
If that's your architecture, that the only way to do it is through the SOAR, that's fine. I'm just saying it's got to show up somewhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we never got to that. So I agree with you, Duncan.
Because in people's real life networks, a lot of them hang off that communications fabric you were talking about in the middle. And maybe will have an architecture that it's a separate network that only the SOAR talks to, but an awful lot of real networks, some of these other devices talk to them too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, what I was doing then, so I'll note that, Duncan. Fair point. I'm just trying to again work off of this document so we have a common view at this point, and we'll fix the document.
Yeah, but I recommended that change to this document and got told, no, don't worry about it. We'll do it in the new document. So make up your mind.
we haven't got to the new document yet, I guess. So it's a good point. We'll continue to work that, and we'll try and position these things. So we'll have to evolve this a little bit more, right, in terms of getting that level in there. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of what I was doing at this point with this document here, is just trying to, and there's a lot of issues with this, don't get me wrong, but you can see I was trying to also put the posture assessment system and relate it. That is one key layer that we have that you guys have defined, is, the representation of the posture assessment system is really giving us information about a lot of security information that is outlying out here. And it'll be presented through that to all these different services and applications above.
And I do think if you get together and try and do that, help with that landscape model, I think distinguishing between what the human teams do and the systems do is important, because this does seem like a little bit of a mix. I mean, maybe you do have threat hunting systems and they're separate from the threat hunting people, and you have threat intelligence systems that are different from the threat intelligence people, but they might not be as distinct as you say, and maybe they are, but that's the whole point of the architecture, is to figure out which are different and which are the same. And I think we have a tendency to lump what humans do with what the systems do, sometimes in ways that are too human oriented and not enough system oriented.
Okay, yeah. For you guys is we have the mix of products like the SIM and SOAR, and then like, analytics and hunting, more like services and things that happen. And do you guys have a preference? Should we just kind of represent things?
How is the SIM and threat intelligence different?
Which one? This one? These two?
A SIM, a SIEM, is something that threat intelligence teams use. Is the SIM the tool and the threat intelligence is the team, or there's a different set of tools that go into this thing called threat intelligence, different set of software that's in our open source repositories for threat intelligence that's different than the SIM and it's different than the humans. I think that human to system interface part is important.
Yeah, threat intelligence is something like TrueStar or maybe an Anomaly, where you're doing your threat analysis platform is dedicated to the threat analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Your SIEM is your management. You're managing the enterprise.
Right. Versus a SIM is like a ArcSight, QRadar.
Blanc, yeah.
And the SOAR is like
different systems create different data, opposed to both other systems and to humans, and those are the lines we have to have on our architecture charts.
Yeah.
But did we ramp things like like a SOAR? And if you saw it in the previous picture, right, it does a lot of things. It has those kind of things as opposed to SOAR, or should we just kind of put the product presentation type of thing up here, or do you not care?
I mean, personally, I like the IACD model where you break it down more functionally, and sometimes products have more than one function in them. And we don't get too hung up on the fact that products have more than one function in them. But again, it depends on what your open source projects are and what you're doing. We only have the yellow ones so far. So it sort of doesn't matter. We just got to show how we fit with everything else. But hopefully over time we'll evolve that we'll have the yellow boxes in more of these.
Okay. All right. So at this point, you're saying it doesn't matter at this point which way we go. Okay, that's cool. All right, so that's one thing I wanted to chat about. The other thing was we do have the paper. I don't know if you guys have seen, we got revision 2 out there. Has anybody taken a look at it? I know I've got some comments back, but I did put a revision 2 out there. What I did here, if Forrest, you're still on, I did fix the objectives a little bit more robustly, and I put what's called our approach, because a lot of comments I got was more on at the beginning anyway, was more about, what are we trying to get done from an OCA point of view? What are our goals? And what are the fundamentals that we have in our mind? And I had some good input from the team here. Things like defining common message formats and leveraging a common bus and making sure we have modularization, that kind of stuff. I just started a list, but more that what we're trying to do and how we're going about it was the first put on that. For the other sections I didn't change, just so you know. But revision 2 was just trying to set the stage better. Given the comments I got from a lot of you folks, I tried to fix this a little bit more to embrace more of those points. All right. So the document is posted out on, I've sent the link out on the meeting notice. Feel free to go out there and comment. It's out on Google Docs and you can edit and comment, or you just want to email me comments. I'll take it either way. It doesn't matter. All right, so that's it for that. The next thing I want to talk about is our use cases. Now, if you guys remember, Doug Austin did this. He's got 3 use cases out here. And I don't know if you've read through them, but I've read through them, and one of the things I was thinking about, and it's back to something the C4 team is doing, right? Is let's align take one of these use cases and align the diagrams and the document to that scope, because it'll at least give us a scope, and then see if we can lay out how everything would work together to solve some of these use cases. And so what I did after that, just so you know,
wait, before you go on. So first of all, I agree 100% with what you just said. I do think we should try and use the use cases to drive the how does the thing work, because that's how everyone ever understands it anyway. But I would like to make my perennial complaint that I will make again is this is just a PDF flying somewhere. It would be nicer if it was in the GitHub repo as markdown, so that if we wanted to add a use case 4 of our own, we could, or if we wanted to comment on line 37 of use case 1, we could. It's very, hey, you guys said these are the use cases, live with it. It's not very collaborative, evolving kind of thing. And also, I've been saying that for a year. I'm going to keep saying it until it occurs.
So
live again.
On behalf of our ITO of SAIC, they don't let us get direct access to the Google Docs, which would probably accomplish like we're doing here with the architecture document. They don't, so it's difficult for us to do it. So I have to go back and forth to my home computer. But we could probably just put it there. Do you want to put it on Google Docs, and someone else can post it for Doug? Because
again, I'd prefer GitHub.
But can you edit directly there?
Change control better on it, but I'll
can
settle
actually,
for anything.
Yeah, you can actually edit directly in GitHub if it's a markdown.
Okay, maybe that's just ignorance on our part. I can't speak for Doug. I know I'm ignorant on that. So we can't get the GitHub though from our computers. I know that. So maybe that's
good.
That's
we are the architecture committee. We are trying to do an open source project that we're keeping everything on GitHub.
Yep.
Seems to me we should, drink our own champagne on this stuff.
Yeah, that should be easy fix.
I'll plus one the move to Markdown. Another thing I'd like it to be is linkable, because I think this is where Mr. Warren's going next, which is to be able to reference them and to be able to jump into them from any place, really.
Yep.
I agree with that, and that means they really should be use case 1 is its own markdown file, use case 2 is its other, and we can make a 4 and 5 if we want, and then you just link to the file and you put bookmarks in it and go to whatever part of it you want. But I think we're going to hopefully have lots of these by the time we're done.
A couple ways to do it. It could all be in one markdown file. I believe that's also linkable as well. But the technology aside, at least make it linkable. So whether it's individual files or a big file with refs in it, that's
either one works.
Yeah. Okay, good points. I've noted those. Good points. Okay, so where I was going with with this discussion was to pick one of these use cases. I don't know if you guys have read through them, but I looked through them and I tried to summarize the scope of each use case. and what components they used. Again, I was just trying to figure out, hey, what kind of scoping would be the result of picking which use case. And I kind of laid it out here. And some of it was components involved, some of it was process involved, which would probably mean a SOAR. So I tried to note, though, just reading through this, what I think we ought to discuss in this call which use case we should pick as a starting use case, and then go ahead and make sure we have the diagrams and documents kind of focused on that scope to start. Are you guys okay with that kind of a approach?
Yeah, I am, and you might as well do them in order, I think, because I'm not sure you could start in the middle. But
Yep. Okay.
other comment though is you might want to look at our famous color diagram and look at all the or even look at the architecture that you showed up earlier that had the things like threat intelligence and other words on there, and just say, hey, are they used in this use case or not? I think the answer is yes. But if the answer is no, then maybe we need some more use cases. And both are possible answers, but I think this sort of box first function thing confuses us at times, and this is the work that will hopefully solve all that. So I am very for it.
So Doug's on the call now. He'll need someone to repeat for him the plan for the GitHub movement if you want him to do that.
Okay, so I think the first thing we agreed to do was change the document to an MD format, right?
Correct.
And the second thing, the requirement I noted was make them linkable. So there was a number of suggestions on how to make that happen, but we wanted to have each use case linkable. And the reason we wanted them linkable is we're going to refer to them from other work products that we have, including the diagramming.
And that's just a section heading in Markdown. So again, if you want to keep it the same way the document is, it just means you have either 3 section headings, 1 per each use case, or you can even make subsections and link to the 3rd paragraph if you feel like it's easy enough to do.
And Doug, if you need help with any of that, I'll be happy to help you with it. But that's what we just chatted about. And what we're going to do here is start with use case 1, and that'll give us our scope and focus for both the paper and the diagramming, so we can kind of use it going forward to bring together what we're trying to do. And then at the end of the day, when we get this done, we'll have a complete use case that hopefully we can then go about at least demonstrating in some way the OCA approach and the value and what's different about it. I mean, that's the end product I'm trying to get after all this is done.
Russ, I'm not sure I captured an ask of me there. This is Doug.
Okay, Doug. Yeah. So do you know how to do MD files in GitHub?
Negative.
Okay, I'll help you with that then. Okay. So then the other ask was to make them linkable, so I'll do that. So I guess there's no asks of yours yet, Doug. I think what we're going to have as an ask is, as Duncan said, is we start looking at programs in the current architecture document we may need to add to the use case. All right, so we're going to start with number 1, but we may need to add to it.
And conversely, we might add to this page you're showing here with some of the other pieces that, is threat intelligence on this page anywhere? It's not showing. I suspect it should be.
Yeah.
And I suspect you won't need to add another use case. I suspect it is in use case 1. It's just, a layer deeper.
Okay, Doug. So the answer is we have a few to-dos on the use cases, but I'll cover it for now because it's all dealing with GitHub. But we'll need your help, I think, going forward to embellish it, because we're now going to start using them to help us drive the other work we're doing. Is that clear, Doug?
Think so, yeah.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure it's clear, because you're coming in cold.
I-
You're coming in cold.
The last time I talked about these was December, and we were going on another tack, and I haven't even been able to catch up just due to busyness level.
No worries, no worries. Thanks.
Since then.
Thanks, Phil. We'll reach out when I find needs for massaging these, which I think we will have. I just haven't got to it yet. Okay, so that's all I had on my side. Let me open it up for any other comments or topics anybody want to bring up. Otherwise, it's 5 o'clock. We're pretty good at planning meetings here in the architecture group. We're right on time to end.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.
Buddy.
Bye-bye.